Let's be honest, we all fumble the bag once in a while, whether it be with girls, a job interview, a bad investment, or a missed opportunity. But these corporations took trillion-dollar losses and ended with death sentences. There are lots of companies that used to be a part of our lives that no longer exist, or play a much smaller role now than they used to. Sometimes they fail to adapt, sometimes they're mismanaged, and sometimes they miss an opportunity to shut down a competitor. And sometimes they just simply fumble the bag. Here are stories of well-known companies that were dominating their industries but fell off into irrelevance. There was a time when no one would blink an eye over your default search engine being Yahoo. I mean, if you're using Bing though, then we'd probably have a problem. In terms of a search engine, I would say Yahoo was relevant until at least 2013, although it was already losing market share by then. One of my biggest time wasters back in the day was scrolling through Yahoo News. I'd be reading the most random stories for hours just as a means to procrastinate from doing my homework. Then when I did start my homework, I'd leech everything off of Yahoo Answers. Does anybody remember how clutch that was? Anybody? Anybody? I even had a Yahoo email, but I've been loyal to Gmail for over a decade now. Yahoo used to be the go-to search engine before Google gained steam in the early to mid 2000s. It was founded in 1995, and then its search engine was launched just a few years later in 1998. It only took a year for it to reach 1 billion search queries per month. By 2002, Yahoo was processing 2 billion search queries per month. In 1998, Google was founded by 2 Stanford students and ran their operation out of a garage. They used an algorithm called PageRank to try and rank web results according to how relevant they were to the user's search terms, which turned out to be a great success. That same year, Google offered itself up to Yahoo for the measly price of $1 million. $1 million. Needless to say, Yahoo declined Google's offer and never heard from them again. Psych! Google came knocking on Yahoo's door again in 2002. Google's market share had already begun skyrocketing. We can take a quick look at this chart from the Motley Fool and see that Yahoo's share of search engine volume in the year 2000 was just under 50%. And by this time, Google's already on track to overtake Yahoo in terms of market share. I equate this to a 7th grader who's getting bullied at school and then comes back to school after the summer's over for everyone to see that puberty hit, he grew 8 inches in height, his voice got way deeper, and he's just ready to kick some ass. So, what was Google offering themselves up for this time around? $5 billion. Yahoo was like, best I could do is $3 billion. Google declined Yahoo's lowball offer, and it was at that point that Yahoo signed its own death sentence. Yahoo's valuation peaked at $125 billion around this time. They were bought out by Verizon in 2016 for, I'm gonna give you guys a moment to come up with that number. $4.8 billion. That's a 96% decline. Eligible for the Wall Street Bets Lost Porn Hall of Fame. I think that the main value at that point just lied in the Yahoo name and brand, as well as the email users it still had. On the email end, they had around 230 million active users around that time, which is still strong, but was dwarfed by Gmail's active user base of about 1.8 billion. Why did Yahoo make this decision? It may have been because they were, at least by baby internet standards, a tech giant in the late 90s, and Google was still in its infancy. Also, search engine revenue only accounted for about 6% of Yahoo's income, so it could have been very likely that when both offers came across their desk, they just didn't see the value in the investment. Comment down below what you think Google and Yahoo's fate would have been had they made a deal in 98 or 02. Would Yahoo take Google's technology and algorithm, which made them skyrocket in success, and implement it in their own search engine? Would Yahoo continue to operate Google under Google's name? Or do any of you think that Yahoo simply would not have made Google the success that it is today, allowing for another entity to take over? Also, as a side note, let me know in the comment section if you think that language-based AI like ChatGPT is already on track to make Google as a search engine obsolete in the future. Story number 2. This story also takes place in the early 2000s, when Netflix's co-founder attempted to sell his company to the video rental giant Blockbuster. Being born in 2000, I think that was part of the last generation, or at least the tail end of the last generation, to be able to shop at Blockbuster. It was a part of my childhood up until about 2009 or 2010, when my local location closed its doors. I still remember the smell inside there. Fun fact, I remember going with my babysitter there, and we left with GTA Vice City stories. That night, we took turns stealing cars and running people over. I didn't end up sleeping for days. I played all day and all night. One day, my mom came into my room to see what it was keeping me so preoccupied that I had not left the house. This cutscene came on at the start of a mission where a guy took a huge line of cocaine. I had no idea what it was, so I didn't think twice, but the next thing I knew, my mom turned off my PlayStation 2. It took me a few years to realize what that actually was. In 2000, Blockbuster had over 9,000 stores worldwide with 60,000 employees running it. Those stores generated them $6 billion in gross revenue. Compare this to Netflix's $36 million revenue that year, which had 0 physical locations. But Netflix's business model was different. They never planned to have any physical locations. They were banking on connecting with their customers with what was at that time a new innovation, the internet. Netflix.com was launched in 1998 with about 900 titles to choose from, which grew to about 3,000 titles in 99. Customers would pay $20 a month for a subscription to have as many movies mailed to their house as they wanted. Netflix prided themselves in having no late fees, which if you're old enough to remember, is actually a big deal. So as Netflix grew as a company during its early years, Blockbusters looked at very nostalgically, but people actually hated them. Blockbuster collected $800 million in late fees in the year 2000. That $800 million accounted for 16% of Blockbuster's revenue that year. They would charge $1 a day in late fees, and if it got bad enough, they would have collection agencies call you and mail you notices. So as Netflix grew as a company during its early years, the founders pondered over the idea of selling it off. They approached Blockbuster in 2000, and before I even reveal the price tag, I want to share that Netflix had between 300,000 to 400,000 subscribers at that time and had an annual revenue of about $36 million. So try to come up with a number that's fair, and I'll reveal the actual number in a few seconds. $50 million. Netflix wanted to be bought out for $50 million. According to Netflix's co-founder, Mark Randolph, the Blockbuster executives literally laughed them out the room. I think it's important to note that many people in the business world in 2000 did not realize that the internet was bound to take over everything in just a few years. Computers were still humongous and expensive. A computer retailed for about $500 on the low end, which is about $882 adjusted for inflation, and about $3,000 for a performance computer, which is about $5,000 today. That's quite expensive for a computer that connects to dial-up internet and takes a couple of minutes to load up a web page. Also, only about half of US households even had a computer in the house. For the executives at Blockbuster, they simply thought that Netflix was a niche business. Little did they know that their hubris would get the best of them. Netflix increased its revenue more than tenfold by 2004, raking in $500 million a year. That year, Blockbuster peaked at 9,100 stores worldwide, and they responded to Netflix's growth by offering a DVD by mail service just like Netflix was. But it didn't help. Blockbuster's average revenue dropped even more. By 2005, Netflix was really giving Blockbuster a run for its money. In an effort to stay competitive, Blockbuster dropped its late fees that were bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars a few years earlier, but that didn't help them either, because their most popular movies and video games would be absent from the shelves for weeks at a time. On the inside, Blockbuster was getting pressured from its shareholders to stick to its brick-and-mortar business. They had one foot in the brick-and-mortar business and a couple of toes in the online business, which was not enough to pay off its crippling debt. Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010 with $1 billion in debt. Through the bankruptcy proceedings, Blockbuster ended up getting bought out by Dish Network for only $320 million. That's a 93% decrease from that $4.8 billion valuation a decade prior. That year, Netflix's market cap was $9.27 billion, and its market cap today is $207 billion. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that had Blockbuster acquired Netflix, they would have had the same dominance and influence that Netflix has today? Comment what you guys think down below, and let's start a discussion. Thanks for watching.